Welcome back to another everyday value mechanic video. In today's video we have same 2015 Volvo XC60 with 2-liter diesel D4 engine. This is a part 3 and this is going to be the last part on this Volvo series. So today's repair I will be replacing timing belt and a water pump, as I do not have any records when was it last time replaced, and at this moment of recording this Volvo has done 139,000 miles. So without any further ado, let's dive in. Also, I would like to mention, as I'm getting a lot of comments of people asking me what's the intervals of replacing these timing belts on the cars that I'm working on and making these videos. So on this particular Volvo, it is specified that every 90,000 or 120 months, which is like 10 years. I would not recommend definitely waiting 10 years or 90,000 miles on any car. If you're able to, then best thing is to replace it at 60,000, but definitely no later than 80,000. And also on these all manufacturer specifications, when they're saying how often they're meant to be changed, they also leaving the important note that is saying, and I will quote here, timing belt replacement intervals quoted by the manufacturer should be regarded as the maximum due to variation in the vehicle usage and operating conditions. The belt may need to be replaced earlier than specified. So what does that mean? You don't wait these 90,000 on your car, because some cars can do 90,000 within a year's time, driving motorways constantly and doing like 200 miles a day or even more than that, and they can obviously wait till those 90,000 is reached and then changing. And some cars gonna be like 10 years and they're still gonna be only 60,000 miles done over that period of time. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. So I started by removing under tray and draining coolant, as you see the switch earlier in the video. Next I proceed to remove the wheel, and now here I'm removing expansion tank, as it is on our way to remove the engine mount. Disconnect the two return small pipes at the top, and now returning the main one, the feed pipe at the bottom. Is a hose clamp there. You just push it forward and disconnect that hose. And last thing what's left is the coolant level sensor. Now the tank can come off. Now we disconnect all fuel lines, as we will remove this upper engine mount, or we call it like upper dog bone on the engine. It's two 15mm bolts. And we put the bolts back inside, not to mix them, and definitely know where they go back. Now there's 10mm bolt for the earth. We tucked this coolant pipe at the back so it was out of our way. And now at this point I secured the engine and lifted up with the trolley jack. Remember to put piece of wood, as it is really easy to crack these sumps. And the piece of wood is gonna work as a cushion and spread the load over that area there. Now there's one 13mm bolt, and then main 15mm bolt that goes into the engine mount. And there's another two 15mm bolts that holding the bracket to the cylinder head. Once those are removed, the engine mount bracket can come off. I'm gonna secure these fuel lines a little bit out of the way. It's not necessary you need to do that, because you can do this job without tucking them away. I disconnected that I think pressure sensor for the fuel, and I'm gonna secure it with a cable tie, just so it gives a little bit better view what I'm doing on the timing belt. Now the engine mount is secure. It's held in by three 15mm bolts. now the timing belt cover. There's two 10mm bolts and then couple clips around it. So here we can see this was the last one that was holding it in place. Now we need to take off the auxiliary belt or fan belt. I use 19mm spanner, lifted up the tension and put this locking pin inside. You can also use some screw or drill bit to secure this tensioner if you don't have these clips. Now the belt can come out. By looks it's a genuine belt. As the history that I have, all the repairs, all the servicing was done by the Volvo. And here we can see on the belt there is these crackings, and this was the reason why I decided to change, as I really don't know, is that like the place where the belt is sewed together, or is it crack, or is it old belt? So I really don't know nothing what's happening. So to be on the safe side, I decided to change this belt. Now there's four multi-spline bolts and one 15mm bolt for this crankshaft pulley. Just wiggle it back and forth and it should come out. Just keep in mind this pulley is quite heavy. I put this big washer to replicate that the pulley is still in place, as I will need to turn the engine later on. So I put the washer and put the bolt back inside. Here we can check the torque specs and the locking position on this belt. I don't have any special tools, so I'm just gonna old school just mark it. So here you can see there's a marking on the camshaft pulley and on the backing plate. Then the high pressure pump has a locking pin, and the crankshaft again, you can lock it, but also you can just mark it. So this is a tensioner where the tensioner should sit. And the crankshaft pulley where it's supposed to be sitting. Now we turn the engine to align all these points. So this is the camshaft. It is always a good idea to mark it, even if you don't have a tool or you have a tool, to mark the position before removal, just in case you always need to go back and you can put everything the way it's supposed to, the way before you removed it. So that's the markings done. And here we can see the crankshaft is slightly off by half a tooth. I would not worry about, I don't know why it is like that. And the high pressure pump also has to go slightly, like half a mil backwards. So I'm gonna do that, but the camshaft pulley is aligned as it's supposed to. So it could be because the belt may be slightly stretched over the time, although it doesn't look like completely worn out to the point where they stretch, and it's very rarely when they stretch at all. So now we can loosen up the tensioner. Tensioner nut is 13mm. Once the tensioner is loosened up, we can proceed to remove the belt. Now we can pull out the belt and the tensioner. Next we proceed to disconnect the water pump. At this point make sure there's something underneath to catch the coolant. Although we drain the coolant, but there's still some coolant behind the water pump that's sitting in the cylinder head or cylinder block. Now we disconnect the idler pulley or guide pulley. That's a T40 Torx bolt. This bolt doesn't come out, so assume they will supply the pulley with the new bolt. Now there's another guide pulley that comes with the bracket.
This is T40.
So this is a T40 again. There's a two 13mm bolts that I removed and one T30 bolt. So altogether 3 bolts for this guide pulley, and it comes with the bracket. Here we can see. Now we clean the area where the water pump sits, make sure it's clean and dry. If there's any old gasket left or anything, make sure you clean it. I use this Scotch-Brite to clean the surface. Here we can see all old parts. So this is the bracket, the guide pulley with the bracket for the tensioner. And the water pump, it was not leaking, doesn't look that bad, and it is a Volvo part. The idler pulley and the tensioner itself, and the belt. Let's find where's those lines that I did not like it. So here we can see like minor cracks or anything. So obviously I'm pinching the belt quite hard, so that's why it could open. But to me it did not look very confident, so that's why I agreed to change it. Now let's see the new. This is a water pump. This is a paper gasket. Comes with the new bolts and the staple. I always wonder one day when they're gonna staple with that paper gasket inside. They're gonna staple this paper gasket to the bag. And we have new hardware, new bolts for the water pump and the water pump itself. I like these metal pumps. Now let's see what's inside the timing belt box. Here I'm looking and checking if there's same sewing place or joining place on this belt is the same as the old one. I could not find anything. As always, measure it if it's the same length. The sticker to mark it when the timing belt was done. Hardware. Looks like the crankshaft bolts. New idler pulley with the new bolt, and on this one we can see the bolt comes out, so slightly different design than the previous one. Here I noticed that the pulley is Gates, although the box is INA, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so the box is INA, but the pulley inside the marking, it has Gates. So assume maybe it's a same company. And here as well on this we also can see is Gates. So maybe Gates is making them and selling them to INA. And the tensioner. Just writing down that it's made in China, but no other markings.
And the gasket. Typically I would put the silicone around this one, but because two things. So when I took it off there was no silicone, so I think manufacturers probably saying not to put it, although this is not genuine Volvo, so who knows. But also, if we look here, these pins, is one here and one here at the top somewhere. That's where the so it goes like this. So these two pins is gonna lock inside and stay there, so it's not gonna move, and I could put the water pump the way I'm supposed to put it and it's not gonna move. And apparently it goes like this.
I'm just double checking if the water pump sits nice and correct. Now I can secure with the first bolt. Once you got the first bolt inside, just take your time and catch the threads with the fingers, with all the bolts, and then proceed with the electric ratchet or anything like that. And the torque spec for these bolts is 17 Newton meters. Now can go back the idler pulley with the tensioner bracket, two 13mm bolts and one T40, and 30 Newton meters for the upper bolts, for the 13mm bolts, and same for the T40 bolt.
This is D50.
Now the upper guide pulley, and the spec for this is 65 Newton meters. And this is how you lock the tensioner. So this locking pin should slide inside there. That prevents for the tensioner to spin. And also pay attention to this arrow on all the tensioners. It's gonna tell you which way you're supposed to tension these tensioners. Once that's been secured, you can put this 13mm nut and just do the finger tight, as you're still gonna need to tension the belt.
6mm Allen key.
So to tension the tensioner, you're gonna need 6mm Allen key. And the belt, it goes from the crankshaft to the bottom guide pulley, then to the high pressure pump, upper guide pulley, and last thing you put either the water pump or camshaft pulley. So you work yourself from the bottom anti-clockwise. Here you can see I put the drill bit, and it has a sharp end. So if you also use a drill bit, keep in mind that you can hurt yourself. On this occasion I just ripped my glove. So starting from here, I put the tensioner and the water pump just so the belt was more or less aligned correctly. And now you can work the bottom guide pulley, now the high pressure pump. Make sure there's no slack on the belt between the crankshaft pulley and and the high pressure pump. My belt slipped here, so but I started a couple times till I get it right. It is helpful if you ask somebody to hold the crankshaft pulley when you put the belt on, as the belt keeps slipping, or also you can put like a screw or a nut to prevent coming off. Here we can see the slack is on the left side of the belt, on the tensioner side. Now we can tension it. And as we saw the arrow, you tension it anti-clockwise. This is a close-up. My Allen key was quite bad condition, it was slipping, so I took a better quality Allen key and the ratchet. Here we can see where the tensioner should sit, right on that dot or between those two lines. And you tighten it with the spanner. Not super tight, but just enough tight so the tension doesn't move. Once you're sure the tensioner is not going to move, the spec for the tensioner is 24 Newton meters. So I torqued it to 25.5, which 1 or 2 plus minus will not gonna affect. And you double check if all the markings is in the place where they're supposed to be or where we marked it. So this is a camshaft. Now you proceed to the high pressure pump. The high pressure pump pulley is locked in, so in theory it can't move. Now we check the belt tension, the belt tensioner, so it sits in the correct place. And last thing is the crankshaft, and the crankshaft is in the same place as it was before I removed the belt, like half a tooth forward. I really don't know why is that happening, but is what it is. It worked, and so I'm not gonna try to fix it. Now you turn the engine twice 360 degrees till all the markings align, and this is what you're after turning twice, this is what you meant to end up with. So you lock again the high pressure pump and you check again all the markings. So this is exactly the same video as half a minute ago I showed, because I lost the footage of after recording, after turning the engine. So but this is what you end up with. And if something doesn't align, you remove the belt, you straighten everything up and start all over. And the crankshaft half tooth forward. And that's it. That's the belt done. So I remove here this auxiliary belt tensioner, as I had difficulties to put the timing belt cover back on, and I noticed that this tensioner was preventing me to locate it properly. So I removed 2 upper bolts and just loosen up the bottom tensioner bolt, and that gives me enough room to locate this timing belt cover. Just push clips on, just make sure it sits nice and snug. This side was bent originally. You secure back the tensioner. Before we forget, and these two 10mm for the timing belt cover. There's no spec, at least I don't have spec how tight they should be, so just tight. Now we can remove this bolt and put the crankshaft pulley back on. So some of these gonna have a locking pin or gudgeon pin to locate it. My occasion it has a cutout, but there was no place to locate it. So you can put whichever way you want it to. as long as the all 4 bolts is aligned. I use the impact gun just to tight that crankshaft pulley bolt. I did not use any tools because I don't have any tool to locate the crankshaft itself. So I struggle with this auxiliary belt, but the way you do it, the last pulley you put on the belt is the tensioner itself, as the all other pulleys has a lip and you can't lift high enough this tensioner to put over those lips. So you put the crankshaft, you put the AC pump and the alternator, and then the last one you put the tensioner and let go, take a pin out, and that's belt done. Now the engine mount. Engine mount bracket. Now we can lower the engine so it sits on the engine mount and put the last bolt inside. And at this stage you can take the trolley jack out. Let's not forget this earth and 10mm bolt. And the upper engine mount or dog bone. Now we connect the expansion tank, connect this coolant level sensor, main feed hose for the expansion tank, and the clip, the hose clamp, I mean. One side slides in, and then there's a 10mm bolt, and these 2 return pipes. I mean, this is 8mm, sorry. And all the brackets for the fuel lines. The fuel lines can go back in. Let's connect that sensor I disconnected earlier. And let's not forget to close the radiator drainage pipe. I forgot to film it, but I closed it earlier.
You know,
the auxiliary belt cover, the wheel arch, the under tray, and the wheel. Now we can fill with the fresh antifreeze. It was green one inside, so I put the same green one back inside. Now we can start the car. I'll leave it running for a while. I'll check for any leaks, see if the auxiliary belt sits correctly, make sure I got the hot air. There is no bleeding on this engine, so just leave the expansion tank cap open till you get the warm air. Keep an eye on the coolant level, and that's basically all. Put the engine core back on. And on this we have come to an end of another everyday valued mechanic video. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate your comments and your thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos on how to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it yet, there's more videos on the way. And on this I'm saying goodbye. Your valued mechanic out.